Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN. Today, we are going to be talking about a potential betrayal that has happened here in 6016. That's SoS4-6016. This is with UDF X ASC Kong. They were going up against DYA, DYH, and BH. And as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us a because that was a lot of things. So this was the matchup pre-final zone, right? From the data we took about 10 days ago on the 12th. And you could see at the moment, right, they had 350 to 198. So there was, oh gosh, if I can do some math here, 152 more 60 mil pluses. And then they had more than double. What am I looking at? 70 or too much, 65 or so. And 60, more like 75, right? Yeah, 75 more 100 mil pluses. And then obviously you can see some of the power numbers, right? They have like 14 bill more power. Right, kills almost double, deads a little less than double, heals a little bit less than double, right? But obviously advantages for the UDF X ASC Kong group. Now, they ended up, if we look at the map itself, and there's some fighting that's going on now, they essentially won, right? The group with 4 kingdoms. And once things got to the middle, then I started hearing that, and as far as like, okay, they're pushing DYH, they're pushing MBH out, okay. Then, as of yesterday on April 21st, we start hearing that what has now transpired is that X and Kong have potentially betrayed UDF and ASC. Now, there's a number of things that are going around for potential reasons on why this happened. But the universal common denominator that this is coming down to, that all of the reasonings have in common, is that it's all about rewards. And so once again, another KvK has fallen victim to civil war, or we'll just say allied wars, due to rewards. And I truly believe that is the bigger piece of conversation here. But let me go and break down some of this first. For those of you wondering, I will be doing a follow-up video to this where I have already reached out to the leadership teams for each of the alliances. So all the ones that we showed off before, being UDF, X, ASC, Kong, DYH, and MBH. Let me go, bam, there we go. So I have got responses back from, I think, everyone so far. I have quite a few DMs to go through, which I will be. But I am putting together a storyline where we're going to be able to hear from up to everyone's so far, right? And we'll show you guys some screenshots off. However, what I want to focus on today is the fact that, and there's kind of a couple ways to look at this. Number one is that if we go back to this for a moment and you look at the matchup, okay? Well, you could argue DYH and MBH, okay, maybe they're like 1 and 2, 1 and 3 going into the KvK. So they basically pull a BDO Echo and they say, okay, look, we're going to 2v4. Now, we know how that worked out for BDO and Echo, and it worked out the same way here. Right, you lost the FC. But again, maybe they didn't care about winning the FC. And I think, to me, that's very, I don't know if I want to say, because it depends on like what impact did DYH or MBH have in, if at all any, in getting X and Kong to switch sides, right? Because obviously that now puts DYH and MBH in a better position. So now it's basically UDF and ASC on their own. Right now, they're the 2, and the other side is the 4. From that, the challenge becomes this, is that 1, you had 4 allies. There's usually 3 types of end-of-season rewards. From what I understand, it's Dragon, it's, I think, the 6 Sentinels that someone had mentioned, and then one other thing, first cap, end of season, And I think the 6 Sentinels for like whatever the other one is, if that's correct. But from what I've understood, it's usually 3 different tiers of end of season rewards. We can at least say that with certainty. And if you have 4 alliances a part of your team, okay, well, that can make things a little, just a secondary layer of being more difficult, more challenging maybe than it needs to. Now, from what I had heard is that ASC opted to recluse themselves from the end of season rewards. So at that point, it was kind of up to UDF, X, and Kong. And I heard this from a few people that corroborated this. However, then you move on to what ultimately is the biggest challenge and biggest obstacle in this KvK is that you still have to decide who is going to get what. Now, it seems that the kind of end of season dragon rewards are potentially the most coveted, because from some of the screenshots I've seen, it appears that that was what was being talked about the most in end of season reward distribution conversations between the alliances from that group of 4. And it feels like, generally speaking, it came down to UDF and X on figuring out, well, okay, where are we going to go? Like, who is going to get what? And that's what I've generally heard. Again, we'll do more of a deep dive on this in the follow-up, but that seems to be the case. This is not uncommon. This is not the first time that we've heard this, and I'm sure, sadly, it won't be the last. For me, I look at the situation and I think to myself, okay, how could you have avoided this? As always, right? One, you could have came up with, and we talked about this often, you come up with a system in the beginning of the KvK that everyone can agree to on how you are going to decide who gets what type of rewards. Whether you end up having that be on a merit basis, on, okay, were you able to push your alliance out of the zone? Did you go and assist and help others? However you do it, right? How much healing and killing did your alliance do versus others? What are any factors you want to apply to it? Try to figure those things out in the beginning. Secondly, once you get to, and secondly, make sure that you get that stuff in writing. So that way, and everyone takes screenshots of that everyone agreed, or they gave a check mark or something to that effect. And then at this point, then you need to make sure that you have an opportunity to publicize, right? So you have a way where, okay, if anyone wants to say that that did not happen, or no, this wasn't agreed to, or they want to switch sides, you can at least for shame them in the streets of the community. Number 2. Number 3, for me, is, and I think this is where we kind of get into the bigger picture stuff. Well, sorry, before we even get there, number 3 is the negative impact that this can have on the community that is within that KvK. Because you have to think about that all the players from those 4 alliances probably were not anticipating anything like this happening. And why is that? Well, it's because it usually comes down to the management teams, to the R5, and then up to all the R4s. And so those are usually always going to be the first people to know. And then the members are going to get that information afterwards, whether that's right away, shortly after, or however long it may be. And so you have to think about, okay, well, you had 2 out of 4 of these, all 4 of these alliances thinking, okay, we're good in the FZ. It's just a matter of like, everyone's like, okay, last update, we made it, we won. Now we just need to figure out, wait for our leaders to let us know who's going to do what for rewards. Okay, like that's basically where all the members are at. And then all of a sudden, you see that people are attacking. At this point, you're like, okay, the season's done, I'm good. You probably have a little bit of relief maybe, or maybe you wanted a little more fighting wherever you fall, whatever side of the fence you fall on. But you're not necessarily thinking at this time that, okay, we're about to get back into it and we're going to fight nonstop to try and survive for a right. So you kind of have to think about, well, how is UDF and ASC feeling in this situation where now they have to go and fight. And then are you still going to get that same level of PvP out of Kong and X who just switch sides? Or is it almost going to kind of be like small group versus slightly bigger small group, right? Fighting. I just say it sucks because it's not, yes, these things can happen. That's understandable. But morally, it has to suck. Just motivationally, it has to suck for the players and how they feel about what's happening, because it's not like these people, keep in mind, it's not like X and Kong potentially betrayed UDF and ASC solely because they're just blatant betrayers and they do it every season. No. This is strictly because of reward distribution. And then these people are impacted because of that. So which gets me to point number 4, and where I'll end on, is before we get to like the juicy stuff next video, potentially on the reasonings for why these people did what they did, and also what went down maybe behind the scenes, because like I said, I've been getting a lot of stuff that's been sent to me. And if you have some stuff that you'd like to share, just again, holler at your boy in my DMs. Number 4 is, like I said, the bigger picture, which is, okay, how can we improve rewards? Like, let's not just talk about what's happening, but let's try and provide some solutions. How can we move forward in a better way? Maybe you make it so if you're going to do teams, or if you know that everyone does teams, maybe improve the rewards. So the people who are on the same team maybe can get the minimum stuff, maybe can get like the minimum rewards altogether. And then maybe you allow them to join certain alliances for like the highest contributors from each of the kingdoms. Maybe you allow things like that to be done. Maybe you allow more individual accolade rewards to be done, but maybe in more ways. Doing things that do not cause for what is and has been in a number, not all, but in a number of KvK groups over the past multitude of seasons, a pain point between reward discussions and distribution, which is, you know, who basically wants to get the final zone behemoth or the dragon. And like I said, we've seen this happen multiple times so far, where situations happen, people don't agree, people feel that they're more entitled than the other team, they're more worthy, they're more deserving of it than another kingdom, another alliance. And sometimes it escalates. So to me, I feel like it's more about how do we maybe solve that, aside from the general coverage. But I'd love to know from you guys, like, have you thought about this? Do you have an answer? Do you have a potential solution on how to solve when groups are teaming up, and to a point of where everyone can kind of feel satisfied, or at least everyone can feel satisfied a lot more than what the current level of satisfaction is among some? And that's albeit when you get situations where maybe you have two kingdoms on a team that are performing about the same, right? Maybe the next thing you consider is, okay, well, maybe you just end up 1v1ing, right? Or you do something to figure it out. I mean, again, I think and then one of the things I've heard too is, what happens when you have what happens when you have a stronger kingdom? Like, what happens when you have a kingdom that's stronger, but they fought less, but then you have the second strongest kingdom on your team who is a little bit weaker than the first strongest, and they probably wouldn't maybe be able to go head to head against them, but they did more PvP and they contributed more to their team to get them to that point than the strongest kingdom did. What happens then? Like, who's to say that the strongest kingdom doesn't force the issue and say, well, you know, whatever reason they want to give, but in the back of their minds, they know that they can take them in a one-on-one? Or what happens when you have two kingdoms that are equally matched, but, you know, one did more fighting, one did less fighting, one has more in reserves than the other one does? It's just, these situations, it is what it is. But to me, it just feels like, okay, maybe there should be something that can limit these potential scenarios and situations from occurring, because to me, it just doesn't feel like that's going to be a good outlook and a good feeling for the players in the amongst the player base in that KvK group. Like I wouldn't be shocked if some people were like, screw this. Like, this sucks. I don't want to go through this anymore. It just put a bad taste in my mouth. Maybe they'll migrate out. Maybe they'll lower their activity. Maybe some people will just stop playing. And my point to say this is that anything can happen. But I almost wonder is there an opportunity? Is there a way that can be improved upon what we've been seeing now? Because this isn't like one-off things. I mean, it's not something that happens in droves every KvK cycle, but it is something that is consistent enough to happen every so often. And more than just a one-off, right, is my point. And so that's why I'm thinking to myself, well, how do we solve that? How do we get around it? So hopefully some of the things I mentioned, maybe you guys have some ideas. Let us know in the comments down below. And what do you think, if you're in this KvK, about the entire situation? Do you feel that X and Kong flat out betrayed UDF and ASC? Do you feel like, no, UDF and ASC put X and Kong in a position to where they felt like this was the only option they had? Do you feel like MBH and DYH had a hand in it? Let me know what you think, what you feel like you are privy to, and what your overall thoughts are on the situation playing out right now in 6016, and what you're looking forward for us to cover in the next video for what we're going to end up hearing from some of the leadership teams that we'll cover based on their feedback. That's it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.